The hot sun beat down on the dusty town of Silver Creek as the old stagecoach finally came to a stop. Emma Hartford sat inside, her hands gripping her small carpetbag so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Through the window, she could see wooden buildings lining a dirt road, a few horses tied to posts, and people going about their business. She took a deep breath and stepped down from the coach. Her feet touched the ground, and dust covered her worn black boots. Emma was 30 years old, but she felt much older. Life had not been kind to her. Her dress was old and patched in several places, though she had tried her best to keep it clean for this journey. Everything she owned was in the small bag she carried. The town looked tired and rough, nothing like St. Louis where she had come from. There were no fancy shops or clean streets here, just simple buildings made of wood, a general store, a saloon, and a few other places she could not quite make out. The afternoon heat made everything shimmer, and Emma felt sweat running down her back. She stood alone on the wooden platform, looking around nervously. Back in St. Louis, her life had fallen apart. Her husband had died 6 months ago, but not before he had gambled away every penny they had. She had been left with nothing, no money, no home, no family to turn to. For weeks, she had tried to find work, any work, but a woman alone with no skills was not wanted anywhere. Then she had seen the advertisement in the newspaper, a rancher in Silver Creek. Montana needed a housekeeper. The pay was not much, but it included room and board. Emma had used her last few dollars to buy the stagecoach ticket. It was either this or starve on the streets. She had no other choice. Now she was here, in this strange town, waiting for a man she had never met. What if he did not come? What if the job was already taken? What if he took one look at her and decided she was not good enough? These thoughts spun around in her head like a storm. Other passengers from the coach had already been greeted by friends or family. They were laughing and talking. Happy to be home, Emma stood apart from them. Feeling very alone, she had written to Mr. James Rutherford, the ranch owner, telling him when she would arrive. He had written back saying he would meet her, but what if he had forgotten? What if he had changed his mind? The minutes felt like hours as Emma waited. She watched the other passengers leave. She watched the driver unload bags and packages. She watched the horses drink water from a trough. Still, nobody came for her. Just when she was beginning to think she had made a terrible mistake, she saw a man walking toward her. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a confident walk. He wore work clothes, dusty boots, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face from the sun. As he got closer, Emma could see he was probably in his late 30s. His face was tanned from years working outside, and he had dark hair. He stopped in front of her and took off his hat. "Miss Hartford," he said in a deep, calm voice. His eyes were kind, which surprised her. "Yes," Emma answered quietly, almost whispering. "I am Emma Hartford. I am James Rutherford," he said. "Welcome to Silver Creek. I am sorry I am a bit late. One of my horses needed attention." He smiled at her, a real smile that reached his eyes. Emma did not know what to say. She had expected someone harsh, maybe someone who would look at her with judgment, but this man seemed decent. Still, she had learned not to trust easily. Life had taught her that lesson well. "Let me take your bag," James said, reaching for her carpet bag. "I can carry it," Emma said quickly, pulling it closer to herself. "I am sure you can," James replied gently. "But you have had a long journey. Please let me help." Slowly, Emma handed him the bag. It was not heavy. It contained one other dress, a nightgown, a few personal items, and nothing more. James did not comment on how light it was. He simply walked toward a wagon parked nearby. Emma followed him, her heart beating fast. This was it. She was really doing this. Going to live on a ranch with a stranger. Working for him, depending on him for everything. The thought terrified her, but she had no other choice. James helped her up onto the wagon seat, then climbed up beside her. He picked up the reins, and the horses started moving. They rode through town, past the buildings and away from the few people on the street. "The ranch is about 5 miles from here," James said. "It is a beautiful ride. You can see the mountains in the distance." Emma nodded but did not speak. She looked straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap. She felt James glance at her a few times, but he did not push her to talk. He seemed comfortable with the silence. As they left the town behind, Emma saw what he meant. The land opened up before them, wide and endless. Green grass stretched in all directions, and far away, purple mountains rose against the blue sky. It was beautiful, so different from the crowded, dirty streets of St. Louis. "This is my land," James said with pride in his voice. "The Double R Ranch. I have been working this land for 15 years now." Emma looked around. She could see cattle in the distance, grazing peacefully. A few trees grew near a creek that ran through the valley. Everything looked clean and natural. For the first time in months, she felt something that might have been hope, but she quickly pushed that feeling away. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment. She was here to work, nothing more. She would keep her head down, do her job, and try to survive. That was all she could expect from life now. The wagon rolled along the dirt path for what felt like forever. Emma sat stiff as a board, her body swaying with each bump and turn. But she kept her eyes forward. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable, at least not for James. He seemed perfectly content to let the horses set the pace while he occasionally pointed out landmarks. "That big oak tree over there, that is where the property line starts," James said, gesturing to a massive tree standing alone in a field. "My father planted it 30 years ago when he first claimed this land." Emma nodded slightly but said nothing. She was not used to making conversation with men. Her late husband had not been a talking man. Unless he was angry or drunk, which was most of the time, she had learned to stay quiet, to make herself small, to avoid attention. James seemed to notice her silence but did not comment on it. Instead, he continued talking in that easy, calm way of his. "I raise cattle mostly. Got about 200 head right now. Also have chickens, a few pigs, and horses, of course. The work keeps me busy. But I like it that way." As they crested a small hill, Emma saw the ranch house for the first time. It was bigger than she had expected. A 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. The wood was weathered but well-maintained. Smoke rose from the chimney, which meant someone had kept a fire going. Several smaller buildings stood nearby. A barn, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, and what looked like a chicken coop. "Here we are," James said, pulling the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "Home." He climbed down and came around to help Emma, but she had already gotten down by herself. She was not used to men helping her. James did not seem offended. He simply grabbed her bag and walked toward the house. Emma followed, taking in everything around her. The porch had a wooden bench and a rocking chair. The door was solid and painted dark green. James opened it and stepped inside, holding it open for her. The inside of the house surprised her. It was clean, much cleaner than she had expected from a man living alone. The front room had a fireplace, 2 chairs, a sofa, and a small table. Everything was simple but well-made. The wooden floors were swept, and curtains hung in the windows. "I know it is not fancy," James said, setting her bag down, "but it is comfortable. The kitchen is through here." He led her through a doorway into a large kitchen with a wood stove, a big table, shelves lined with dishes and supplies, and windows that let in plenty of light. Emma looked around. This would be where she spent most of her time. The stove looked well used but clean. The dishes were mismatched but neatly stacked. She could already see what needed to be organized. What needed scrubbing, what needed attention. "I will show you your room," James said, leading her back through the main room and up a narrow staircase. Upstairs there were 4 doors. He opened the one closest to the stairs. "This is yours." The room was small but pleasant. It had a bed with a thick quilt, a dresser, a small table with a lamp, and a window that looked out over the valley. Emma had not had a room of her own in years in St. Louis. She and her husband had lived in one cramped room above a tavern. "I hope it suits you," James said from the doorway. "If you need anything, blankets, candles, whatever, just let me know." "It is fine," Emma said quietly. It was more than fine. It was better than anything she had hoped for. "Good," James said. "I will let you settle in. Dinner is usually around 6. I have been managing on my own, but I will not lie. I am looking forward to some proper cooking," he smiled. "Take your time. Rest if you need to. The house is yours to explore." He left. and Emma heard his boots on the stairs, then the sound of the front door closing. She sat down on the bed, her legs suddenly weak. She looked around the room again, touching the quilt, the dresser, the curtains. Everything was real. This was not a dream. But old fears crept in quickly. James seemed kind now. But so had her husband in the beginning. Men could change. They could turn cruel without warning. She would need to be careful, to watch for signs, to stay alert. Emma unpacked her few belongings, putting her extra dress in the dresser, her hairbrush on the table, her nightgown under the pillow. It took only minutes. Then she went downstairs to examine the kitchen more closely. She found flour, salt, sugar, coffee, dried beans, some vegetables, and smoked meat, enough to make a decent meal. She also found clean pots and pans, though they needed better organization. Emma set to work immediately. It felt good to have something to do. To keep her hands busy, she decided to make stew, something simple but hearty. She chopped vegetables, prepared the meat, and set everything to simmer on the stove. Then she made biscuits, mixing the dough with practiced hands. This she knew how to do. This was safe as she worked. She heard sounds from outside, men's voices, horses, the sounds of ranch work. Once, she glanced out the window and saw James talking to two other men. All three were gesturing toward the barn, discussing something. James laughed at something one of them said. It was a genuine, warm laugh. Emma quickly stepped back from the window. She did not want to be caught staring. By 6 o'clock, dinner was ready. Emma had set the table, put out the food, and was standing by the stove when she heard boots on the porch. James came in, removing his hat and hanging it by the door. He washed his hands in a basin near the door, then looked at the table. "That smells incredible," he said, genuine appreciation in his voice. "I cannot remember the last time this house smelled like a real home." Emma did not respond. She simply gestured toward the table. Inviting him to sit, James sat down and began to eat. After the first bite, he closed his eyes. "Miss Hartford, this is delicious. Truly." "Thank you," Emma said quietly. She stood by the stove, unsure what to do. "Are you not eating?" James asked, looking up at her. "I thought I would eat after," Emma said. "Nonsense," James said, standing up and pulling out another chair. "Please sit. We are not formal here. Besides, it seems silly for you to stand there watching me eat," hesitantly. Emma sat down. She took small portions and ate slowly. The food was good. She knew it was good, but she could barely taste it. She was too aware of James across from her, too nervous about making a wrong move. They ate in silence for a while. Then James said, "I want you to know something. Miss Hartford, you are not a servant here. You are an employee. That means you deserve respect. You eat at the table, you have your own time, and you speak your mind if something is not right. I need help running this house, and I will pay you fairly for that help. But I do not expect you to be invisible. Do you understand?" Emma looked at him, surprised. She nodded slowly. "Good," James said. "Now tell me, what do you think of Montana so far?" It was such a simple question, but Emma realized no one had asked her opinion on anything in years. She thought for a moment, then said softly, "It is very open." "Very big?" "It is," James agreed, smiling. "That is what I love about it. Room to breathe, Emma thought. Maybe that was exactly what she needed. Emma woke before dawn the next morning, just as she had done every day for the past 10 years. The habit was carved deep into her bones. Her late husband had demanded breakfast before sunrise, and any delay had brought his fist down hard. Now he was 6 months in the grave, but her body still remembered. She dressed quickly in the dark room and made her way downstairs, careful to step softly so her footsteps would not wake anyone. The house was silent and cold. The fire in the stove had died during the night. Emma knew how to revive it. She had the flames crackling within minutes. By the time the sun began to paint the sky pink and gold, Emma had already scrubbed the kitchen floor, organized 3 cupboards, and started breakfast. Coffee bubbled in the pot, bacon sizzled in the pan, biscuits baked in the oven. Her hands moved with practiced speed, never resting, never still. James came down at 6:30, looking surprised to find everything already done. "Good morning," he said, yawning and stretching. "You are up early. Good morning." "Mr. Rutherford," Emma said, keeping her eyes on the stove. Breakfast is ready. Please. Call me James, he said, sitting down at the table. And you did not need to get up so early. 6:30 or 7 would be fine. Emma nodded, but did not respond. She knew she would wake at dawn regardless. Her body would not allow anything else. She served him his breakfast and immediately began washing the dishes she had used. Her hands plunged into the hot water. Scrubbing hard? Will you not eat? James asked. The same question as yesterday. I will eat later, Emma said. After I finish the dishes, James frowned slightly but did not argue. He ate his breakfast while Emma worked. When he left to begin his day, she finally sat down with a small plate of food. She ate quickly, mechanically, tasting nothing. The days that followed fell into a brutal pattern. Emma worked from before sunrise until late into the night. She cleaned every corner of the house, scrubbing floors that were already clean, washing windows until they sparkled. Organizing and reorganizing cupboards, she mended James's clothes, even the ones that barely needed mending. She cooked elaborate meals, far more than what two people needed. She could not stop. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering, remembering meant feeling. And feeling was something she could not afford. The ranch hands noticed her first. 3 men worked on the Double R Ranch, Old Pete, who had been there since James's father's time. Young Tom, barely 20 years old, and Miguel, who had come from Mexico 5 years ago and never left. They ate lunch in the bunkhouse, but sometimes James invited them to the main house for Sunday dinner. That first Sunday, they came in quietly, removing their hats and washing up before sitting at the table. Emma had cooked enough food for 10 people. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, fresh bread, and apple pie, ma'am. This is amazing, Tom said, his eyes wide. I have not eaten like this since I left my mother's house. Emma nodded but did not smile. She stood by the stove, ready to serve more food if anyone needed it. Miss Hartford, please sit with us, James said. Gesturing to an empty chair, I am fine here, Emma said quickly. The men exchanged glances but said nothing. They had all noticed how she moved through the house like a ghost, how she flinched when anyone approached too quickly, how she never met anyone's eyes for more than a second. Old Pete, who had seen a lot of life, recognized the signs. Someone had broken this woman's spirit after 2 weeks. Emma's hands were raw and bleeding from constant scrubbing. She wrapped them in cloth and kept working. She had lost weight, eating only scraps and leftovers. Sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, the exhaustion showed in her pale face and the dark circles under her eyes. But she pushed herself harder one evening. James found her in the kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, scrubbing the floor for the second time that day. Emma, he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She jumped anyway, dropping the brush. Her hands flew up instinctively to protect her face. James froze, his heart clenched at the gesture. He had suspected, but seeing it confirmed felt like a punch to the gut. Emma, he said very gently, it is just me. You are safe. Slowly, Emma lowered her hands, her face flushed with shame. I am sorry, she whispered. I was just finishing the floor. The floor is fine, James said. It has been fine since the first time you cleaned it this morning. Emma, you do not need to work like this. I do, Emma said, her voice barely audible. I need to earn my keep. I need to make sure you do not regret hiring me. I could never regret it, James said. But you are working yourself to death. You need to rest. You need to eat properly. You need to take care of yourself. I am fine, Emma insisted. Picking up the brush again, James crouched down to her level. Careful to keep some distance. Emma, look at me, he said. She could not. She kept her eyes on the floor. Please, James said. Something in his voice made her look up. His eyes were filled with concern. Genuine worry. Not anger, not impatience. Just concern. You are not fine, James said quietly. And that is all right. You do not have to be fine. But you also do not have to destroy yourself. I hired you to help, not to kill yourself working. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I just need to make sure everything is perfect, she said, her voice shaking. I need to make sure I do not make mistakes. What happens if you make a mistake? James asked gently. The question confused her. I do not know, she stammered. You might get angry. You might send me away, Emma, James said, his voice sad. "I'm not going to send you away because you make a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. That is part of being human. And I am not going to get angry over a burned dinner or a dish that is not washed. Do you understand?" Emma wanted to believe him. But years of experience had taught her that men always got angry eventually. It was only a matter of time. That night, she finally made it to her room at midnight. She collapsed on the bed, too tired to even change into her nightgown, but sleep did not bring peace. She dreamed of her husband, of his fists, of his voice telling her she was worthless, stupid, a burden. She woke up gasping, tears streaming down her face. The words echoed in her mind. "You are not worth anything, Emma. You are nothing." Less than nothing, she believed those words. They had been repeated so many times that they had become truth. No matter how kind James was, no matter how much she worked, she could not escape them. In the darkness of her room, Emma whispered the words to herself. "I am not worth anything." And somewhere deep inside, she believed it completely. The next morning, Emma found wildflowers on the kitchen table. A simple bundle of purple and yellow blooms tied with a piece of twine, sitting in a tin cup filled with water. She stared at them for a long moment, confused. No one had ever given her flowers before. She looked around, but the kitchen was empty. James had already gone out to work. Emma touched one of the petals carefully, as if it might disappear. Then she pushed the thought away and started breakfast. The flowers remained on the table, a small splash of color in the quiet kitchen. 3 days later, more flowers appeared, this time. White daisies and wild roses. Again, no note, no explanation. Just flowers on the table when she came down in the morning. Emma found herself looking at them while she worked. Something about their simple beauty made her chest feel tight. James never mentioned the flowers, never asked if she liked them, never expected thanks. They just appeared once a week, sometimes twice, always different, always fresh. Emma eventually started putting them in a nicer vase she found in the cupboard, though she would not admit, even to herself, that she looked forward to finding them. One afternoon, Emma was carrying a heavy basket of wet laundry to hang outside when James appeared beside her. "Let me get that," he said, taking the basket before she could protest. "I can do it," Emma said quickly, reaching for the basket. "I know you can," James replied, already walking toward the clothesline. "But why should you carry it when I am right here?" He hung the clothes with her, handing her items from the basket while she pinned them to the line. He worked in comfortable silence, not bothered by the domestic task. When they finished, he simply smiled and went back to fixing a fence. Emma stood there watching him go. In her old life, her husband would have mocked her for needing help, or worse, accused her of being lazy. The idea of him actually helping would have been laughable. Small things began to change around the house. The squeaky hinge on her bedroom door that had kept her alert at night was suddenly fixed. She had never mentioned it, but one morning she noticed the door opened silently. The loose floorboard on the stairs that she had learned to step over was repaired. A new, softer pillow appeared on her bed, replacing the flat, lumpy one. James did these things without announcement, without seeking praise. Emma would notice them and feel a strange warmth in her chest that she did not know how to name. One evening, she made beef stew for dinner. It was a recipe she knew well, but this time the meat was tougher than usual, and the vegetables had cooked too long and become mushy. Emma stared at the pot in dismay. It was not good enough, not even close to the standard she held herself to. She almost threw the entire pot away and started over. But it was already 6 o'clock, and James would be coming in soon. Her hands trembled as she served it, every imperfection screaming at her. James came in, washed up, and sat down. He took a bite of the stew, chewed thoughtfully, then took another. "This is good," he said. "The flavor is excellent." "You have a gift for seasoning, Emma." Emma waited for the but, for the criticism. For the disappointment, it never came. James ate his entire bowl and had a second helping. He complimented the bread she had made and asked if there was any left for tomorrow. After dinner, as Emma was cleaning up, James said, "You know, my mother used to say that the best meals are the ones made with care. Not perfection," she said. "Perfection is cold. But care is warm." I think she was right. Emma paused. Her hands in the dishwater, she did not know how to respond to that. The following week, Emma fell ill. She woke with a fever and a sore throat that made swallowing painful. She tried to get up anyway, tried to push through it as she always had. But her legs would not hold her. She collapsed back onto the bed, frustrated and frightened. She must have fallen asleep because when she opened her eyes, James was sitting in a chair beside her bed. A basin of cool water sat on the table, and a damp cloth was on her forehead. She tried to sit up, panic rising. "I am sorry," she croaked. "I need to make breakfast." "You need to rest," James said firmly but kindly. "You have a fever, Emma. Your body is telling you to stop." "But the cooking," Emma protested weakly. "We'll survive without you for a few days," James finished. "Old Pete knows how to cook beans and bacon. We will not starve right now." "You need to focus on getting better," Emma wanted to argue, but another wave of fever washed over her, and she sank back into the pillows over the next 2 days. James checked on her regularly. He brought her soup, though she could barely taste it. He changed the cool cloths on her forehead. He made sure she drank water. He sat with her when the fever dreams came. His presence steady and calm. Once in her delirium, Emma thought he was her husband and cringed away. Crying out, James immediately stepped back. "You are safe, Emma," he said over and over. "You are safe here. No one will hurt you, I promise." When the fever finally broke on the 3rd day, Emma woke to find herself weak but clear-headed. A tray sat on the table with toast, tea, and she almost smiled, a single wildflower in a small cup. She ate slowly, her body feeling fragile and strange. Later that day, James knocked on her door. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," Emma said, her voice still rough. "Thank you. You did not have to take care of me." "Of course I did," James said, looking genuinely puzzled. "You were sick. What else would I do?" Emma did not have an answer for that. In her experience, being sick had made her a burden, an inconvenience, something to be resented. But James spoke as if caring for her had been the most natural thing in the world. "Take another day to rest," James said. "The house will still be here tomorrow. So will the work, right now. You need to regain your strength." After he left, Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Something was shifting inside her, something she had kept locked away for so long. She was not ready to name it yet, but it was there, growing slowly, like a seed in dark soil finally finding light. She looked at the wildflower on her tray. Its petals were already starting to wilt, but it was still beautiful, still alive, still reaching toward the sun. Maybe, Emma thought, maybe she could do the same. October brought cold winds that swept down from the mountains, carrying the promise of winter. Emma had been at the Double R Ranch for nearly 2 months now, and though she still worked harder than necessary, James had managed to convince her to rest occasionally, to eat full meals at the table with him, to take Sunday afternoons off. She was learning slowly that this place was different, that James was different. But the old fears still lived inside her, waiting for the moment when everything would change, when kindness would reveal itself as a trap. The storm came on a Tuesday evening. Emma had noticed the dark clouds gathering all afternoon, but she had not expected the violence that followed. By dinner time, the sky had turned an ugly greenish black, and the wind howled around the house like a living thing. "Going to be a big one," James said, looking out the window. "I need to make sure the animals are secure. The barn doors need to be latched properly." "Be careful," Emma said, the words surprising both of them. It was the first time she had expressed concern for him. James smiled. "I will. Stay inside. I will be back soon." He went out into the gathering storm, and Emma cleaned up from dinner, trying not to watch the windows, trying not to remember. But as the first crack of thunder split the sky, memory crashed over her like a wave. Her husband had been worse during storms. The sound of thunder had seemed to feed his rage, giving him permission to unleash it. She remembered cowering in corners while lightning flashed. his silhouette towering over her, his voice roaring louder than the thunder itself. Another boom shook the house, and Emma dropped the plate she was holding. It shattered on the floor, pieces scattering everywhere. She stared at the broken ceramic, her heart pounding. He would have beaten her for this. Called her clumsy, stupid, worthless. Lightning flashed, turning the world white for a moment. Emma could almost see him standing there, fist raised. Emma backed away from the broken plate, her breathing coming in short gasps. She needed to get away, needed to hide. She stumbled into the parlor and sank into the corner by the fireplace, making herself as small as possible. The thunder came again, rolling and crashing, and Emma pressed her hands over her ears. Her whole body was shaking. Tears streamed down her face. She was back in St. Louis, back in that terrible room above the tavern, back in the nightmare she thought she had escaped. The storm raged outside and inside. Emma was breaking apart. She did not hear James come back in, did not hear him calling her name, did not notice him until he was kneeling several feet away from her, his hair wet from rain. Concern etched deep in his face. "Emma," he said softly. "Emma, look at me." She could not. She was trapped in the past, drowning in it. "You are safe," James said, his voice cutting through the thunder. "You are safe here, Emma. I promise you are safe." He did not move closer, did not try to touch her. He simply stayed there, steady and present, repeating those words, "You are safe, you are safe." Gradually, slowly, Emma's breathing began to calm. The present came back into focus. This was not St. Louis. This was Montana. This was James's house. This was the Double R Ranch. Her husband was dead. He could not hurt her anymore, but the storm outside continued, and with each crack of thunder, Emma flinched. "Tell me about the storms," James said gently. "Tell me what happened." Emma shook her head, unable to speak. "You do not have to carry it alone," James said. "Whatever it is, whatever happened, you do not have to hold it by yourself anymore." Something in his voice, something in the way he sat there patiently, never demanding, never forcing, made the words start to come. Slowly at first, then faster, like water breaking through a dam. She told him about her husband, about how charming he had been when they first met, how he had promised to take care of her, about how the drinking had started, then the gambling, then the rage. She told him about the first time he hit her, how he had cried afterward and sworn it would never happen again, about how it did happen again and again and again. She told him about the storms, how thunder seemed to give him license to be even crueler, how she had learned to read the weather, to prepare for the violence that would come with the rain. She told him about the humiliation, the degradation, the slow erasure of everything she had once been. "He told me I was worthless every single day," Emma said, her voice breaking. "He said I was stupid, clumsy, ugly, a burden. He said no one else would ever want me, that I should be grateful he kept me around, and I started to believe him." Thunder crashed again, and Emma curled tighter into herself. "When he died, I thought I would feel free," she continued, "but I just felt empty. All those things he said, they were still there, inside me, still true." "They were never true," James said, his voice rough with emotion. "Emma, listen to me. None of those things were ever true." "How do you know?" Emma whispered. "You barely know me." "I know that you are one of the strongest people I have ever met," James said. "I know that you survived something that would have destroyed most people. I know that you work harder than anyone I have ever known. I know that you care about doing things well, that you have pride in your work. I know that you have been kind to me, even though kindness was rarely shown to you." Emma looked at him through her tears, really looked at him for the first time. His face was earnest, open, honest. There was no deception there, no hidden agenda, just genuine care. "I know what it is like to lose someone," James said quietly. "My wife died 5 years ago, childbirth. The baby, too. For a long time, this house was just a place I existed. Nothing more. Then you came. And it became a home again. I hear you humming sometimes when you cook. I see the flowers you arrange. I taste the care you put into meals. This place has life again because of you. I broke a plate, Emma said, the words coming out small and frightened. In the kitchen. I broke a plate during the storm. Is that what you are worried about? James asked. Emma, it is just a plate. I have a dozen more. It does not matter. It mattered to him, Emma said. Everything mattered to him. Every tiny mistake was proof that I was worthless. James was quiet for a moment. Then he said very carefully, Emma, I need you to understand something. I am not him. I will never be him. You could break every plate in this house, and I would not hurt you. I would not yell at you. I would just sweep up the pieces and move on. Do you believe me? Emma wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But belief required trust, and trust required faith, and faith was something that had been beaten out of her long ago. I do not know, she whispered honestly. That is all right, James said. You do not have to know right now, but I will keep showing you, every day. I will keep showing you that you are safe here, that you matter, that you have worth, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. The storm continued outside, but inside, in that quiet parlor, something shifted. Emma felt the walls she had built around herself crack. Just a little, just enough to let in a sliver of light. I am not worth anything, she whispered, the words that had become her truth, her identity, her prison. James leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. That is the biggest lie anyone ever told you, he said. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emma stared at James, searching his face for any sign of dishonesty, any hint that this was manipulation. But all she saw was raw sincerity, an openness that frightened her more than cruelty ever had. Because it asked her to hope? It is not a lie, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. He said it every day for years. If you hear something enough times, it becomes true. No, James said firmly. If you hear something enough times, it becomes familiar. That does not make it true, he shifted slightly, still maintaining that careful distance. Emma, do you know what I see when I look at you? She shook her head, afraid to know, afraid not to know. I see someone who gets up before dawn every day, not because she has to, but because she cannot stop herself from working, James said. I see someone who puts care into every single thing she does, from cooking to mending to organizing. I see someone who survived hell and came out the other side still able to be gentle, still able to care. That takes strength most people do not have. Emma felt tears welling up again. But these were different from the panic tears of moments ago. These came from somewhere deeper, from a place that had been frozen for so long. You want to know what worth looks like, James continued, his voice growing passionate. It is you making sure the ranch hands have hot coffee on cold mornings. Even though that is not part of your job, it is you mending Tom's shirt because you noticed it was torn. It is you leaving scraps for the barn cats, even though no one asked you to. It is 1,000 small kindnesses that you do not even realize you are doing. Those are just things, Emma stammered. Anyone would do them. No, James said. They would not. Those things come from someone who still has compassion, even after everything. Even after being told she was worthless, she still finds ways to care for others. That is not nothing, Emma. That is everything. Thunder rumbled again, softer now, the storm beginning to move away. Emma found herself able to breathe a little easier. The past was loosening its grip just slightly. I want to tell you something, James said, his voice dropping lower, more vulnerable. About why I understand, at least a little. Emma waited, surprised. James never talked about himself, never shared his pain. When Sarah died, my wife, I felt like I died too, James said, staring at his hands. She was in labor for 2 days. 2 days of watching her suffer, of being helpless to stop it. The doctor did everything he could, but it was not enough. I lost them both in the same hour. My wife and my daughter. Emma's heart clenched at the raw grief in his voice. For a long time after that, I just existed, James continued. I worked until I could not stand, then I slept, then I worked again. I did not talk to anyone more than necessary. I did not let myself feel anything. The ranch hands, they tried to help, but I pushed them away. I pushed everyone away. What changed? Emma asked softly. James looked up at her, a sad smile on his face. Time, mostly, and old Pete. He would not let me disappear completely. He kept showing up, kept talking to me even when I did not respond, kept reminding me that I was still alive, whether I wanted to be or not. Eventually, I realized that Sarah would not have wanted me to stop living. She loved life too much for that, he paused, gathering his thoughts. But even after I came back to myself, there was this emptiness in the house. It was just a building, a place to sleep, nothing more. I hired housekeepers before, 3 different women over the years, but they never stayed long. The isolation got to them. Or they found better positions in town. I stopped trying after the last one left. Why did you try again with me? Emma asked. Because your letter was different, James said. The other women wrote about their qualifications, their experience, their expectations. But you wrote 3 sentences. I am a hard worker. I need this position. I will not disappoint you. There was something in those words, a desperation I recognized, and I thought, maybe this person needs a second chance as much as I need help. Emma remembered writing that letter, her hand shaking, using her last pennies to mail it. She had not allowed herself to hope for a response. When you arrived, James continued, I saw someone even more broken than I had been, and I knew that if you stayed, if you found even a little bit of peace here, then maybe this house could be more than just walls and roof. Maybe it could be a place of healing for both of us. I do not know how to heal, Emma admitted. I do not even know where to start. Start by believing one true thing, James said. Just one. You do not have to believe everything I have said tonight. I know that is too much, but pick one thing, one small truth, and hold on to it. Emma thought about this. It seemed impossible. Her husband's voice was still so loud in her head, drowning out everything else, but she tried. She thought about the past 2 months, about the small moments that had confused her, the kindnesses that had not made sense. You have never yelled at me, she said slowly, testing the words. Not once. Not even when I burned the bread that first week. Or when I accidentally used salt instead of sugar in your coffee. Or when I reorganized the barn without asking and you could not find anything. You have never raised your voice to me? No, James agreed. And I never will. That is a promise. My husband would have. He would have. Emma's voice broke. He would have done so much worse. I know, James said gently. But I am not your husband, Emma. I am just a rancher who needs help running his house, and who happens to believe that kindness costs nothing and means everything. Emma felt something inside her chest. Something that had been clenched tight for years begin to loosen. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. A tiny space opening up, where belief might someday take root. I am not worth anything, she said again, but this time, her voice wavered with uncertainty instead of conviction. You are worth everything, James replied, matching her tone. And someday, I hope you will believe that. The storm outside had passed, leaving only the soft sound of rain pattering on the roof. Emma was exhausted, wrung out from crying, from remembering, from beginning, just barely beginning, to let someone see her pain. I should clean up the plate, she said. Starting to rise tomorrow, James said. Tonight you should rest. The plate will still be there in the morning. It is not going anywhere. Emma hesitated, then nodded. She was too tired to argue, too tired to push herself through one more task. As she stood, her legs shaky. James stood too. Thank you, Emma said. For listening, for not. You do not have to thank me, James said. Not for basic human decency. As Emma climbed the stairs to her room, she felt different, lighter somehow. As if speaking the truth had released some of the weight she had been carrying. She looked back and saw James still standing in the parlor. watching to make sure she made it safely in that moment. Emma allowed herself to believe one small truth. She was safe here. Maybe not forever, maybe not completely, but right now, in this house, on this ranch, she was safe. It was a start. November arrived with the first snow, transforming the ranch into something from a dream. Emma stood at the kitchen window, watching fat white flakes drift down from a gray sky, covering everything in soft silence. She had never seen anything so beautiful in St. Louis. Snow had been gray and dirty within hours, trampled into slush by too many feet on too many streets. But here, it stayed pure and clean, blanketing the valley in white. "First snow of the season," James said, coming up beside her with his coffee. "Beautiful, is it not?" "Yes," Emma said, and realized she was smiling, an actual smile, not the polite, nervous expression she usually wore, a real smile that came from somewhere genuine inside her. James noticed. She could tell by the way his own smile deepened. But he did not comment on it. He simply stood there with her, watching the snow fall, sharing the quiet moment. Something had shifted between them since the night of the storm 3 weeks ago. Emma was still cautious, still carried her fears close to her chest. But they no longer controlled her completely. She had started to speak more freely, to share small observations about the ranch, the animals, the changing season. She had even laughed once, at something Miguel had said during Sunday dinner. The sound had surprised her so much that she had immediately covered her mouth, but James had just smiled and asked Miguel to tell another story. The nightmares still came sometimes, but they were less frequent now. And when they did come, Emma no longer spent the rest of the night convincing herself she was worthless. Instead, she remembered James's words, "I am not him. I will never be him." She held on to that truth like a lifeline. She had also started to take better care of herself. She ate full meals now, slept more than 4 hours a night, and only cleaned what actually needed cleaning. She still worked hard. That was part of who she was. But she no longer worked as punishment, as proof of worth. She worked because she took pride in what she did, because she enjoyed making the house comfortable, because it felt good to contribute. One afternoon in mid-November, Emma was in the parlor mending a quilt when she heard horses approaching. She looked out and saw a rider she did not recognize. A well-dressed man on a fine horse. James came out to meet him, and they talked for several minutes before James took the man's horse to the barn. The stranger came to the door, and Emma answered it. "Good afternoon," he said, removing his hat. "I am Mr. Porter. I have business with Mr. Rutherford. Please come in," Emma said, showing him to the parlor. "I will bring coffee." When she returned with the coffee tray, James had joined them. The two men were discussing cattle prices and winter preparations. Emma served them and started to leave. "Miss Hartford," Mr. Porter said, stopping her. "Are you from the Hartford family in St. Louis?" Emma froze, her heart suddenly pounding. I lived there once," she managed. "Thought I recognized the name, Mr. Porter said. "I do business in St. Louis occasionally. Heard about Robert Hartford's passing. Terrible thing. Gambling debts. Heard his widow disappeared?" He looked at her with open curiosity. Emma felt her face flush. "She could not speak, could not move, Mr. Porter," James said, his voice cool. "Miss Hartford's personal affairs are not a topic for discussion, Mr. Porter had the grace to look embarrassed. "Of course, my apologies. I meant no offense." After he left an hour later, Emma stood in the kitchen, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "James found her there. Are you all right?" he asked. "He knows," Emma said, her voice shaking. "He knows about everything, about Robert, about the debts, about me. So what if he does?" James said gently. "So what?" Emma turned to face him. "James, if people know, if they talk, it will reflect badly on you, on the ranch, a woman with my past. Living here, working for you, people will say things. They will judge you. Let them," James said simply. "You do not understand," Emma said desperately. "In St. Louis, after Robert died, people looked at me like I was dirt. They whispered about me, blamed me for his debts, said I should have controlled him better. I cannot. I cannot go through that again." "You will not have to," James said. "Emma, I do not care what people think. And anyone in this valley who matters, who has any sense at all, will judge you by who you are now. Not by what someone else did to you, Emma shook her head. You should care, your reputation matters. The ranch's reputation matters. Not more than you do, James said quietly. Emma stared at him, shocked into silence. I mean it, James continued. Not more than you do. Emma, you matter here. You matter to this place, to the hands, to me. I do not want you to leave because some gossip might spread. I never said I was leaving, Emma said. Confused, are you not? James asked. I see it in your eyes. You are already planning your exit, already thinking about where you will go next. To protect me from scandal, he was right. Emma realized. She had been doing exactly that. Already composing the letter she would write, already planning to slip away before dawn. It was her pattern, her survival instinct. Leave before you are forced out. Leave before the pain comes. I do not want to hurt you, Emma said softly. Then stay, James said. Stay and let me worry about my own reputation. Stay and keep making this house a home. Stay and just be here. Emma felt tears welling up. What if more people find out? What if they say terrible things? Then they say terrible things, James said. Words cannot hurt me, Emma, not anymore. I have been through worse. We both have. If we survived what we survived, we can survive some small-town gossip. You are too kind, Emma whispered. No, James said. I am just practical. I have a housekeeper who actually makes this place livable, who the ranch hands adore, who can cook better than anyone I have ever met. Why would I let her go because of gossip, despite everything? Emma felt a small laugh escape. Is that all I am? A good cook and a decent conversationalist, James added with a slight smile, and someone who arranges flowers nicely, and who hums when she thinks no one is listening, and who leaves treats for the barn cats even though she pretends not to. Emma felt her cheeks warm, but this time not from shame. You notice too much. I notice what matters, James said. They stood there in the kitchen, the afternoon light fading outside, something unspoken passing between them. It was not love, not yet. Neither of them was ready for that. But it was something, trust maybe, or friendship, or the beginning of both. I will stay, Emma said finally. But if this becomes a problem, if people start causing trouble, then we will deal with it together, James interrupted. No more running, Emma. Not unless you truly want to leave, and if that day comes, if you decide this is not where you want to be, then I will understand. But do not leave because you think you are protecting me. I do not need protection. I need you to stay. The words hung between them. Heavy with meaning, neither was quite ready to examine. That night, a letter arrived, brought by the evening mail rider. It was addressed to Emma, forwarded from St. Louis. She opened it with trembling hands. It was from her late husband's brother, Thomas Hartford, offering her a place in his household in St. Louis. He needed someone to manage his home, to care for his aging mother. The pay was decent, the position respectable. Emma read the letter twice, then walked to the fireplace. She held it over the flames, watching the paper catch and curl. Turning to ash, she did not need to go back. Did not need to return to a city filled with bad memories and worse people. She had chosen for the first time in her life. She had chosen where she wanted to be, and she chose here. Spring arrived slowly in Montana, as if the land itself was stretching after a long sleep. Emma stood on the porch in early April, watching the valley transform from brown and white to every shade of green imaginable. The winter had been hard, with deep snows and bitter cold. But they had survived it together. She and James, Old Pete, Tom, and Miguel, all of them working together, keeping the ranch running. Keeping each other company through the long, dark months. Emma was different now. She could feel it in the way she moved through the world. No longer hunched and apologetic, but upright, present. She could feel it in the way she spoke, her voice stronger, more certain. She could feel it in the way she slept. Deeply and without terror most nights anyway. The nightmares still came occasionally, but they no longer defined her. They were just memories now, painful but past. They could not hurt her anymore, not here. Not with the mountains standing guard and the wide sky above and James working with the horses in the corral. She watched him now, his easy grace with the animals. the patient way he worked with a young colt that was still learning to trust. He had taught her something about trust, about how it could not be forced or demanded, only offered and accepted, slowly, carefully, one day at a time. "You are staring," old Pete said, climbing the porch steps with his morning coffee. His weathered face creased into a knowing smile. "I am watching," Emma corrected. But she smiled, too. She could smile easily now. It no longer felt like a risk. "That is what I said," Pete chuckled, settling into the rocking chair. "You know, I have been on this ranch for near 20 years now, watched James grow from a boy to a man, watched him fall in love and get married, watched him break when he lost her, thought he would never come back from that." Emma waited, knowing Pete would get to his point in his own time. "Then you showed up," Pete continued. "Scared little thing jumping at shadows, working yourself to death. And I thought, well, maybe James can help her some, give her a safe place to land." He took a sip of his coffee. "But you know what? You helped him just as much. Maybe more." "I did not do anything special," Emma said. "That is where you are wrong," Pete said. "You brought life back to this place, not just cooking and cleaning, though Lord knows the cooking is appreciated, but life, real life. You brought warmth and care and home. A house is just wooden nails until someone makes it a home." Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you, Pete." "Do not thank me for telling the truth," Pete said. Standing up, just do not let fear make your decisions anymore. You have earned the right to choose happiness, if it is offered." He gave her a meaningful look and headed toward the barn. Emma knew what he meant. She had known for weeks, maybe months, that something was growing between her and James. Something more than employer and employee, more than friendship. It was there in the way James smiled when she entered a room, in the way he always saved the first cup of morning coffee for her, in the way he asked her opinion about ranch decisions, actually listened, and sometimes changed his plans based on what she said. It was there in the way her heart lifted when she heard his boots on the porch, in the way she found excuses to be near him, in the way she had started to imagine a future that included more than just working here, a future that included belonging here. But old fears died hard. She was still afraid sometimes, afraid that this was too good to be true, that she would wake up and find it was all a dream, or worse, that it was real but temporary, that eventually James would see her the way her husband had, as worthless, broken, a burden, as if summoned by her thoughts. James finished with the colt and walked toward the house. He climbed the porch steps and stood beside her, not too close, but close enough that she could feel his presence like warmth from a fire. "Beautiful morning," he said. "Yes," Emma agreed. "The valley is waking up. So is the garden," James said. "I noticed the first shoots coming up where you planted those seeds. You have a gift for growing things." Emma had started a garden in March when the ground first thawed. She had found packets of seeds in the general store and spent her own money on them. James had helped her till a patch of soil near the house, and she had planted vegetables and herbs and some flowers too, just because she wanted to see them bloom. "I hope they survive," Emma said. "I have never really kept a garden before." "They will survive," James said with certainty. "You will make sure of it. That is what you do. You nurture things. Help them grow." Emma looked at him, really looked at him. His face was familiar now, dear even. She knew the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident. She knew how his eyes crinkled when he really smiled. She knew the sound of his laughter, rare but genuine. She knew his kindness, his patience, his strength. "James," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I want to tell you something." He turned to face her fully, giving her his complete attention. "I am listening. When I came here last summer, I was barely alive," Emma said, choosing her words carefully. "I was just existing, going through motions. I did not think I deserved anything more than that. I did not think I was worth anything more than that." James started to speak, but Emma held up her hand. "Let me finish," she said, and he nodded. "You never told me I was wrong," Emma continued. "You never tried to convince me or argue with me. You just showed me every day with 1,000 small kindnesses. You showed me a different way of living, a different way of being, and slowly, So slowly I barely noticed it happening. I started to believe that maybe I could be worth something after all. Emma, James said, his voice rough. I know my worth now, Emma said, and her voice was strong. Certain. I know that I am strong. I know that I am capable. I know that I survived something terrible and came out the other side still able to care, still able to hope, still able to feel. She took a breath. I know my worth, James. And part of how I know it is because of you. Because you saw it before I could and you never stopped seeing it, even when I could not see it myself. James reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused from work, strong but gentle. I'm glad, he said simply. I am so glad you can see it now. They stood there, hands joined, looking out over the valley. The sun was climbing higher, painting everything gold. The cattle grazed peacefully, the horses moved in the corral. The ranch was alive with the sounds of a new day beginning. Emma, James said after a while, I need to tell you something too. She waited, her heart beating faster. This ranch, it was just a place for me to work until I died, James said. After Sarah, after losing them, I stopped really living. I just worked, existed. But then you came and slowly this became a home again. Not just for you, for me too. You brought me back to life, Emma. And I do not want to imagine this place without you anymore. I am not going anywhere, Emma said softly. I know, James said. But I want you to know that you always have a place here. Not just as someone who works here, but as someone who belongs here. As someone who matters to the ranch, to me. Emma felt tears on her cheeks, but they were good tears, healing tears. You matter to me too, she whispered. They stood together as the sun rose higher, still holding hands, still learning to trust, still healing from their pasts, but together now, choosing each other, choosing hope, choosing life. The rancher had taken her hand and smiled, and in doing so, had helped her find not just a home but herself.